The year was 1983. Star Wars Episode VI Return of the Jedi ended an epic saga. There was a pop song that seemed like an anthem for stalkers topping the charts. And the new wave was, well, new wave, and for the cherry on top, people actually thought this looked good. Ladies, and nerds, Gen Xers, and everyone who has ever tried to blow into a cartridge even though it absolutely does nothing, or so we've been told. Welcome back to the Professor of Gaming. Today, we're talking about one of the darkest times in video game history. No, not that. The moment when American arcades died. Home gaming crashed, and Atari basically said, "Let's speed run bankruptcy. Grab a seat. Class is in session." Before Fortnite, before Call of Duty. Before Zelda, Pokemon, and Grand Theft Auto. Before microtransactions and before you had to download a 75 gig patch just to make the start screen work. There were arcades. And these places? They were sacred. Imagine a building full of neon lights. The smell of stale soda, cigarettes with a touch of radness. Kids crowded around cabinets like monks worshipping a glowing 8-bit deity. Back then, if you got your initials on a machine, that wasn't a high score. That was your social status. You were basically the bee's knees. Kids still say, bee's knees, right? Arcades were so popular that if you walked in with a handful of quarters, you weren't just playing a game. You were entering a ritual. But then corporations said, "Oh wow, CHHing, people love video games. Let's make all the video games." And so began what historians call the Great Flood of hot garbage. At least, that's what I read in an encyclopedia. Trust my words, I'm not making it up, how dare you judge me. Anyways, these games were repetitive and uninspired. They were copycats, unimaginative and played out, but before that, suddenly every company, toy makers, cereal brands, the guy who probably sold bootleg fireworks behind the gas station, they all released their own consoles and games. Some were good, most were bad. Quality control? No. Testing? Nope. Basic functionality? Laughs in Atari. There were so many systems that if you stacked them, you'd have a stairway to console heaven. And then, the disaster piece. A game so underwhelming and ugly. E.T. on the Atari 2600. Atari rushed it out in 5 weeks. I can't even choose a backlog game to start playing in 5 weeks. This game was so bad that parents who bought it ended up grounding themselves and divorcing their spouses if they bought the game. No, seriously, look it up. It happened, I tell ya. Atari printed millions of copies. Millions. The leftover cartridges ended up buried in the desert like cursed relics. And nobody bought them, except that one guy down the street with the white van that tried to give us some candy. Meanwhile, the arcade scene was cracking under the pressure. Imagine being a polished game like Donkey Kong, sitting next to some bootleg cabinet named Monkey Ladder made by a company whose office is probably just a garage. Kids stopped dropping quarters. Parents stopped giving kids quarters. And arcades started realizing that maybe filling their entire building with flashing machines wasn't enough to prevent total financial obliteration. The golden age was ending. And if you walked into an arcade in 1983, it felt like walking into Walmart at 3 a.m. You could tell something was off. And so you have consoles failing and arcades dying. Retailers suddenly didn't trust anything with a microchip. And analysts legitimately said gaming was a fad that would disappear completely. Imagine thinking gaming was over. Investors bailed. Companies folded. It was chaos. It looked like the end. E.T. being buried like some kind of ritual sacrifice. All because people forgot one simple lesson? If you make trash, people won't buy trash. Invest in design, development, new and various mechanics and/or story, and your game will most likely do well. Who knew? Duh. Well, there was this one game studio that would change history, right around the corner. But that's a tale for another time. Class dismissed, and remember, for homework, hit that like button as if it were your main action button. And subscribe to the channel. And as always, keep on gaming.